today's mindful moment, packed with insights but designed to fit into your busy life. One deep dive at a time. Okay, strap in everybody. Today we're going deep on this idea of authoritarianism. You hear it everywhere these days, but get this. You know Silvio Berlusconi?
The Italian prime minister.
Yeah, him. Well, he was maybe mixed up in some pretty shady stuff, like deals with Russian energy companies.
Really?
Maybe even making some money on the side while getting cozy with Putin.
Wow.
We're talking about moves that could have hurt America and Europe. And there's even this whole thing with a $5 billion payout to Libya.
Sounds like a spy movie.
Totally. It just shows you how personal stuff and money can get tangled up with global politics.
Yeah, big time.
And that leads us right into what we're diving into. Authoritarianism. You'd think it'd be easy to define.
Right, with everyone talking about it.
Exactly. But turns out it's way more complicated. People are tossing around terms like illiberal democracies.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
Hybrid regimes.
Right.
And even electoral autocracies. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you even pin it down?
All right.
So we're using this book, Strongmen, by Ruth Ben-Ghiat. She breaks down how these leaders get power, how they keep it, and thankfully, how they lose it.
I think her book is essential reading these days, really. It's not just history. It's like a warning about what's happening right now.
Totally agree. So let's get into it. What even makes someone a strong man, you know?
Right.
Ben-Ghiat talks about these patterns they all seem to have. Like Viktor Orban, the guy running Hungary.
Okay, yeah.
He actually calls himself an illiberal Democrat.
Yeah.
Like it's a badge of honor or something.
I think that term, it was Fareed Zakaria who came up with it, right?
Yeah. And it's tricky because they're saying, hey, we have elections,
Uh-huh.
but we don't care about all that freedom stuff.
It's how they chip away at what makes a democracy. But it all looks okay on the surface. Really smart way to take more power.
And grabbing power, that's the thing. A lot of these guys, they use some big crisis or shock to really tighten their grip.
I see what you mean.
Like Hitler used the Reichstag fire.
Oh, yeah, to go after anyone who disagreed with him.
And people even say Trump did the same thing with COVID.
Used it to get more power for himself.
It's like they're just waiting for something crazy to happen so they can pounce.
It is a pattern, you're right. Kind of reminds me of what Walter Benjamin said about states of emergency.
Oh, how so?
Well, he said that they can become normal, like the new normal. And when people are scared, they'll accept anything if it makes them feel safe.
So they're using fear, basically.
Basically.
And besides those big events, Ben-Ghiat also talks about their personalities. A lot of them have similar traits.
Oh, interesting.
Hitler, he acted all-powerful, but he was actually super insecure.
Huh.
Then you have Mussolini, obsessed with what the press said about him.
Really?
And Putin, from what we know, he hates looking weak. And Trump, he went with his gut all the time making decisions.
Interesting how that all fits together.
It's weird, right? We think of them as ruthless, efficient. But their own personal stuff messes things up.
Big time. Take Putin. He's so worried about Russia's place in the world, and that's why he's done some really aggressive stuff.
Makes you think twice about that strongman equals efficiency idea.
Yeah.
In the book, Ben-Ghiat says authoritarianism actually leads to terrible leadership. Economies tank, smart people leave or get silenced.
Absolutely. And they love to say they're doing what the people want, even when most people have no idea what's going on or they're totally against it.
Like military coups are a classic example of that.
For sure.
Think about Gaddafi in Libya or Pinochet in Chile. Claimed they were saving their countries,
Uh-huh.
but really they just wanted power.
They use that line about the people to make the military look good, too, and it shuts down anyone who disagrees.
It's like they're trying to force everyone to be on the same page, even if they have to crush anyone who's not. It makes you wonder, how do they even get away with it?
Well, that's where one of their biggest tools comes in. Propaganda.
So propaganda. It's almost like they're casting spells. You know, the way these regimes twist information and how they make people see things their way. It's kind of wild.
It is. It's like this dark art almost, and we see it everywhere. I mean, you think back to Mussolini and his newsreels. They were so carefully staged, you know?
Yeah, and then you have Trump just going off on Twitter, these crazy rants. It's fascinating, though, how they figured out how to use new tech to get their message out.
It's true. The ways they do it change, but what they want is always the same. They want to control what everyone thinks and believes. You remember those Nazi rallies in Nuremberg? Just these huge spectacles
Yeah.
designed to make people feel like they were part of something powerful, all united behind the leader. And today, Social media is like the new Nuremberg. It's where they put on these big shows.
Yeah, it's like they don't even need the regular media anymore. They just go right to the people.
Yeah.
These echo chambers. But even the best propaganda can't work forever, can it? People have got to catch on at some point.
You're right, there's a limit. If you keep hearing the same thing over and over, you start to tune it out. Even worse, you might start thinking they're lying. You get cynical. It's like the message loses its power. There was this Chilean artist, Guyot. He lived under Pinochet.
Oh, right.
His art, it showed how ridiculous the propaganda was. Like, there was nothing behind it.
Like they're trying to paint this perfect picture, but you can see the brushstrokes, and it's not fooling anyone. And sometimes, these regimes, they kind of mess up and do things that actually hurt them in the long run. Ben-Ghiat talks about how Gaddafi sent all these Libyan students abroad to study.
Oh, yeah, he thought it would make them loyal, but
it backfired. They saw different ways of life, different ideas, and when they came back, they were ready to challenge him.
totally backfired. It's like when you try to control every little thing, sometimes you create the problem you were trying to avoid.
Exactly. So we've got propaganda. But they also use corruption, right, to keep their power.
Oh, yeah, corruption is huge. It's not just something that happens, they use it on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, to make people loyal and to shut up anyone who might cause trouble.
How do they do that?
They create these inner circles, family, friends, people they can trust, and they give them all the good stuff, the resources, the money.
I see.
It's like, if you're loyal, you're in the club. Look at Berlusconi or Trump. They mix their own businesses with their politics. The lines got blurry,
So you're loyal to them, they take care of you. But if you cross them,
You're out.
makes sense. And then there's that whole divide and conquer thing, right? Keeping everyone suspicious of each other.
Oh, that's classic. Keep everyone off balance. Mussolini was great at that, shuffling his cabinet all the time. Pinochet did it too, with these cabinet purges.
It seems so chaotic, but it works, right?
Totally. No one knows who to trust, so they all just depend on the leader. It's a way to stay in control.
Like they're playing chess, but with real people.
Exactly. And then, on top of all that, there's this even sneakier thing they use now. Compromat.
Yeah.
Basically blackmail.
Oh, right.
They get some dirt on you, something that could ruin your life, and then they use it to make you do what they want. It's not about rewards anymore. It's all about threats.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
Like something you'd see in a movie, but it's real. Makes you think, what do they have on each other?
And it's getting harder to fight. Even with all the international efforts against corruption, it's a whole new level of authoritarianism.
Yeah, a new battleground.
Yeah.
And speaking of battles, we got to talk about violence. Ben-Ghiat says it's not just a tool for these strongmen, it's like the foundation of their whole system.
It's not just about making people be quiet. It's about making a whole new society based on fear. Like, it challenges what Hannah Arendt said about violence being only destructive.
Right.
The way these totalitarian regimes took over in the 20th century, it shows how they used violence to create their own rules, their own power structure.
Powerful point. It's like they're rewriting the rules of the game. And the only way to play is to be afraid.
And if you don't play by their rules, well, look at what happened to Giacomo Matteotti.
Yeah, he spoke out against Mussolini and...
He was murdered. And Boris Nemtsov under Putin, same thing. It takes incredible courage to stand up to these regimes.
It shows you the real cost of freedom. But resistance doesn't always mean you have to be a martyr, right? There are ways to fight back without using violence. There are, right? What are some ways people have resisted that haven't involved violence?
Well, there's the White Rose group, back in Nazi Germany.
Oh, yeah.
They would hand out these anti-Nazi leaflets. Risky business, obviously.
Probably risky.
And Guyot, the artist we were talking about earlier, under Pinochet.
Right, in Chile.
His art, it was like this subtle way to poke holes in the regime's propaganda.
Oh, I get it.
And then you've got Pussy Riot in Russia, under Putin.
Oh, yeah.
They use performance art to make their point, to challenge the Kremlin. Really brave stuff. These examples just show you, even when things seem really bad, people find ways to resist.
And now with social media, it's like it's easier for those voices to be heard.
Exactly. It can help people connect and support each other, even when the government's trying to shut them down. It's like a whole new battleground, But here's the thing. Even though these strong men seem so powerful, Ben-Ghiat actually says they're more vulnerable than we think.
Vulnerable how? What do you mean by that?
Well, she says most of them, they don't get overthrown by the people, by revolutions and all that.
Like good.
Nope. It's actually the elites, the people closest to them, who end up taking them down.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I guess it makes sense, though. They're the ones who see what's really going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. They see how messed up things really are. And they're the ones who have the most to lose if the whole system collapses. So when they start to get nervous, that's when you know things might be changing.
So it's not always about these huge protests. It can be more like a slow burn from the inside.
Exactly. Like with Mobutu in Zaire, remember? He held on to power for so long, but eventually, even his own people turned against him.
Because they could see he was leading them down a bad path.
That's right. The corruption, the economy tanking, the pressure from other countries, they knew it couldn't last.
So even the guys who seem untouchable, they're not really.
Not at all. And sometimes the way they fall, it's almost like they self-destruct. Ben-Ghiat calls it gambling for resurrection.
Gambling for resurrection, what's that?
It's when they get desperate and they double down on everything. Like they become even more oppressive, more violent, thinking that'll save them. But it usually just makes things worse.
Like they're digging themselves into a deeper hole.
Yeah, exactly. And then once they're gone, that's when the really hard work begins. You have to deal with the mess they left behind, all the damage they did.
That's a good point. It's not enough to just get rid of the dictator. You have to heal the country, heal the people.
Absolutely. It's a long, complicated process. There's no easy fix. It can take generations to really recover from that kind of trauma.
So where do you even start? What does that kind of healing look like?
Well, it's different for every country, of course. Depends on what happened, how long it went on, all of that. But there are some things that seem to be important no matter what.
Like what?
Like finding out the truth about what happened, making sure people are held accountable for the bad things they did, and rebuilding trust, in the government, in each other.
It's almost like putting the pieces back together after something's been shattered.
It's a good way to put it. And everyone has to be involved, not just the people who were hurt by the regime. Everyone has to help rebuild a better society.
So it's about remembering the past, but also looking toward the future.
Exactly. Learning from what happened and making sure it never happens again. It's not easy, but it's the only way to move forward. And I think, that's one of the biggest takeaways from Strongmen. It reminds us that democracy, it's not something that just happens. It's something we have to constantly work for, fight for.
We can't take it for granted.
No, not at all. We have to be aware of the warning signs, and be ready to push back against anyone who tries to take away our freedom.
Well said. So I guess that wraps up our deep dive into Strongmen. It's been a really eye-opening conversation. I think we've all learned a lot.
Definitely. And for everyone listening, I hope this has made you think, about the world we live in and what we can do to protect democracy.
Absolutely. Don't let this be the end of the conversation. Talk about it with your friends, your family, everyone. The more we understand about this stuff, the better chance we have of stopping it from happening again.
And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.
Make sure to subscribe and share this episode with your friends. We're constantly exploring new and challenging ideas, things that make you question what you think you know.
And we've included a purchase link for the book in the show notes, just for you. Keep those minds sharp and never stop questioning. Until next time.